Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Purple Science Podcast.
For the past 2 weeks, we were on a very short break, and I have so many things to update you guys with. I attended this really cool STEAM summer school in Europe, and I met many science communicators around the world, and together with them, conducted a STEAM event in less than a week. It was crazy. It was as interesting as it sounds, and opened up a new spectrum of perspectives for me, exposed me to a new set of problems and challenges that I'd love to solve in the field of psychom, and also many fun interactions, many insightful interactions that I'd love to put out there for you guys to listen. We will be on it in the upcoming episodes. But right before this trip, I also had an amazing conversation with a very special guest. He is a doctoral student at UC San Diego, California, in the United States, and also currently a summer research intern with Johnson and Johnson. This person wanted to become a scientist when he was in the sixth grade. He has so many accolades, fellowships, and inspirational experiences at his name. I had a lot of fun talking to him. I know that you will too. Let's listen to Mr. A. Anand Ojha in this two-part series where he shares glimpses from his journey as a researcher in the lab and beyond.
So, the first thing that I saw on your profile and was absolutely intrigued by it was the fact that you have done a lot of internships during your undergrad. And that is
Mm.
not common. What I more commonly see is my friends during our undergrad days and now in masters, they're absolutely struggling to find internships. And they want some experience, they want to enhance their skills, but they don't know what companies or what institutes are looking for. So I have two questions. One is if
Sure.
you can share your experiences getting these internships as a fresher. And the second is, does studying in a premier institute or does studying in a two-tier city that makes a difference? So can you share that with us?
Yeah, I'll start with your second question first, but let me tell you about myself. A brief introduction is I come from Kota, and Kota is in Rajasthan. Everyone knows about that. And there's about 3 lakh students studying every year in Kota, preparing for the IIT JEE examinations and the AIIMS. If for such a cutthroat competition, there's always an outlier of students you would see who participates in international science Olympiads, cyber Olympiads, etc., etc. So one of the first things what we do uh, as students here is either you should go for engineering or you should go for medical. And if you could not crack any one of them or either of them, you should go to a private college or a government college, get a BTech, yeah, and get an MTech or maybe a job and everything else. But one of the third dimensions where we miss is science, doing science in the right way possible. There are some very premier institutes in India for doing science, and students, when they are in the secondary and post secondary education, 11th, 12th, 10th, neither do parents know about these, and neither do the teachers know about them. And because I've spent my 10 to 15 years in Kota, and I was pretty much surprised as a student because I wanted to be a scientist when I was in sixth, seventh standard. And there were students coming from all over the country: Bihar, UP, even Bengal, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, everyone, but not even a fraction of students nor the faculties there knew about these institutes. Institutes which do undergraduate research at one of the levels where you would really feel prestigious while doing science. So that's something that is missing from the Indian point of view, doing undergraduate research in science. So I was more focused about getting into the best research institutes doing basic science, physics, chemistry, maths, biology. And one of the best is IISc. And for your listeners, I should tell you, like it's as competitive as getting IIT Bombay in BTech. So you should be in the top 300 ranks in Indian Institute of Technology exams to get IISc. There's just 80, 90 seats available every year. So unluckily, unfortunately, I couldn't score that rank in J. My rank was under 1,000, but it was not enough to get me a seat in IISc. So the second option available for me was getting into IISERs. These come like you have a tree or a hierarchy of undergrad education where you see the top tiers colleges. That comes ISC, then IISERs, then NICERs. Now there are also IITs coming into giving the degree called the BSMS degree. So these are a specialized degree like Bachelor of Science and Masters of Science, BSMS. That's a 5-year course. I think nowadays students are looking into these courses a lot more than when I graduated or when I entered. It was back in 2013 when I started my undergrad studies. So that's where the thing was. So now, if you go through these hardships, when your goal was clear, and there were many people, many students like me, who wanted to get into IISERs, who wanted to get into ISCs, do good research. Then, while in the process of searching, you get into these colleges, and now, from the point of view of a student in IISER, it's kind of the atmosphere, your seniors and your faculties who have kind of done their PhDs almost from either the US or Europe. So you are pretty much impressed when you go directly from your home to an institute where you see all your professors getting degrees from abroad. You're impressed and you try to ask them, what do I do to become like you? And that's where research begins. So as soon as you enter the college, in the first month itself, students start preparing for their winter internship. Forget about the next summer internship. So you get admitted in August and you start finding your first internship in winter. And it's all because of the whole idea of your senior mentorship, your faculty mentorship. You're exposed to different opportunities during the first year itself. So I did my first year internship in TIFR Mumbai. That was back in my first year in December. And once you are exposed to these great people, good students from all the IISERs, IITs, and ISCs, TIFRs, then you know like what's lying ahead of you. That's how you're exposed to these ideas. With respect to now, I should not say tier 3 or tier 4 institutes. It's like the central universities, and you should better use those words like central universities, universities, private universities. So now these students are not exposed to an extent, or they're not motivated enough to do internship, rather than they think, okay, let's go back home, we have done enough, let's take a rest for some time. Doing science is difficult, and if you're not motivated and passionate enough, then getting productivity, being productive all 3 or 5 years, followed by PhD 5 years, it's difficult. So the environment does make a difference, and that's what happened not just to me, but to all my friends. Like I think majority of the students did end up finding internship at the end of their first year, if not the winter ones. Does that answer your question to some extent?
It does. But I definitely
Cool.
have a lot of follow-up questions.
Sure, sure.
I think that, being brought up in Kota has had a lot of effect on you too.
Yes.
Yeah, being in the competitive spirit that you were. So the thing is that are these internships being enabled by your colleges, or you go out and find and you get seniors or professors telling you that this will be beneficial? Is it pushed by and enabled by the college itself?
To some extent, yes. And to some extent, it's the student onto itself. So
Mhm.
there's so many opportunities like the students don't know about. One of them is the Indian Academy of Sciences, which provides student internships in all over the national labs in the country. You need to apply with what you want to work on, because in the first year you don't know what's going on. So you kind of write, apply with your CGPA, whatever grades you have, and they are pretty much competitive. But I think I have seen students getting IAS internships from all over the universities. Then you have the undergrad research internships from all the IITs. So it's all about how well you can Google and keep yourself to date about these resources, these opportunities. Also, like, because these institutes are pretty much well known, so you have to identify yourself. Like, what do you see yourself in 2 to 3 years from now, when you will be graduating or you will be choosing a major area of research? Then you kind of write to these professors and individually, on an individual level, and ask them, like, okay, I don't know anything. I'm just in the beginning of my undergrad research, but that's how it begins. I want to learn. I want to spend time in your lab. Would you provide me a lab space and essentially fund me also during that time? And if written in a nice manner and given, like, you have few recommendations or reference letters from your teachers or professors who teach you, then you can just write in a mail, I'm happy to provide any recommendations if needed. Then I think majority of them do answer your mail. So that's how one of the processes students apply to get research internships.
I strongly feel that I don't know anything coming from a IISER student is much different from the same coming from another university student.
Mm. Mm.
But what do you think these institutions look for?
So right now, I'll give an example of how do I mentor undergrad. So I'm currently mentoring 3 undergraduate students. They're coming from various backgrounds. So I'll explain about my background later, but what do we really see is not how much you know. What professors or scientists see is how much are you capable of learning, how much are you capable of accepting challenges, and how much are you capable to give in whatever you learn from. No one is perfect. Even I don't know much about what I'm doing. It's all about how much can you extend it further and how much are you motivated. It's all about self motivation. What is the purpose of your research? Do you just want a name of the lab, or do you really want to learn? And all these questions can be answered in by the student itself. They're very naive. We were very naive when we were kids. So it reflects from your answers, from your emails, that what are you exactly looking for? If someone wants to transition from undergrad research or basic science to an industry, they're looking for application based research. People like us who wanted to do pure research are mostly looking into the new methods development. So that's how professors see. They obviously want to talk to students on Zoom, Skype at that time to figure out what exactly they both are looking for. And if it bridges both the aims, what is the professor looking for? Or he is looking for someone to help him in one of the projects with a grad student, or it also means if it is mutual, then that's how an internship is finalized.
I think that's a very important advice. It also, so when usually students write to professors, they focus on what they can get from the internship and
Yes.
basically to write it on their CV, what would look good on their CV.
Mhm.
But they
Yeah.
also have to come in peace with, or,
Yes.
find middle grounds with the hosting institute. So that is definitely
Exactly.
very
Yeah.
important.
And sometimes students think, okay, he's such a big shot, such a big
Mm,
professor.
right.
How can I write? It
Ab-
doesn't matter until you're honest to yourself. Like, you are trying to learn, you don't know much, and that's how you express it to the professor you're looking for, and that's how it begins. So I have in my third year, I was like trying to understand what I want to do with my life, pretty much confused. Everyone is. And if someone says they are sorted in their third, fourth year, it is something that is hard to believe. I wrote to a professor. He knew that his research is far from what I've been aspiring to. And he was based in South Korea. He was an American professor, very proficient, very close to getting a Nobel Prize. And he just asked to have a Zoom call. Sorry, it was Skype at that time. And we had a talk for like 1.5 hours. He asked about what is good in Rajasthan, what are the foods that you eat. He had so many grad students who were Indian. And finally, he asked me to come to his lab. So I was not proficient in his research, but because of him, I have learned so many things. And means all these connections do work in tandem to help a student learn the different research environment. That is very important. If you learn how to survive well in a research environment as an undergrad student, it really helps you a lot, even if you're transitioning to industry, getting an MTech, or doing a PhD.
All right. So before we quickly move to the to your background,
Mhm.
one question that I have is, one, how do you select these internships for yourself? Like, how do you choose who you want to write to? And second thing, as an undergrad or as a student, how do you manage your finances? Because a lot of these institutes, a lot of these labs might not be willing to either pay their trainees or maybe pay some amount that is not enough to, like, that will not suffice.
Okay, I'll start with the first question, and that was like, how do you decide? So I was very, very proficient in physics. It was triple E examination at that time. I think now they are different. In 2012, 13, I gave the AI triple E examination, and I secured 120 out of 120 in chemistry. That is a kind of a record. So, but I loved physics. I wanted to do physics, but I somehow did good in chemistry always, also reflected in my grades in my chemistry papers in my first year and second year. That somehow gave me an idea of maybe I should do something which implies chemistry but has the basics of physics. So a student has to know his strong points and his weak, where he is not good at, or he doesn't feel motivated to do something. So he should be selective about that. He should not run after the labs which are good, but he is not motivated to work in those areas of research. It's a big red flag. You should not go after the name. You should go after where you feel you can push the boundaries of your expertise there. So I wanted to do something in between, and that helped me out in understanding whom I should write to. For example, I was good in maths and I wanted to do chemistry based on physics. So the best combination of all these three was quantum mechanics, which includes the principle of physics, which is more quantitative, and it is applied in chemistry as well. So quantum mechanics. So I started searching for good quantum chemistry labs in India. And the first one that I found out was in Kolkata. And I think that is the institute in which India received its first Nobel Prize, where C.V. Raman worked. That was Indian Association for the Cultivation Science. So I was pretty much happy. I didn't know that at that time. Then I boasted to my friends, okay, I got a university where C.V. Raman used to work and design the spectroscopy techniques. So yeah, so that's how you find out. You write the mails constantly, uh, try to engage the professor if he's not replying. 3 days, 4 days, you send a reminder, etc., etc. So you do your work. Regarding the second question about finances, so IISER students are lucky enough because they are being paid from the institute. And that is, they are, in my time, we were being paid 20,000 rupees for the entire summer. So we had to use those money. Otherwise, they were just meant for doing internships, and that is why even ISC does that, ICERS does that, NICER, the National Institute of Science Education and Research, does that. So there are a few universities, even central universities like University of Hyderabad and some other institutes does that. I think even IITs are right now doing it, and they do this through something called an Inspire Fellowship. And anyone in India who is doing an undergrad in all these subjects can apply for an Inspire Fellowship. It's not just allocated for IISER students, but IISER students were guaranteed this fellowship, but others have to apply to this fellowship. That's the only difference here. So any undergrad who is doing an undergraduation in science can apply for the Inspire Fellowship. I think the cutoff is somewhere around, you have to get a GPA of 8 or something. I'm not sure. But yes, they are eligible and they can get that. So if you get an Inspire, you get 60,000 rupees a year, but also you additionally get 20,000 rupees for purchasing your books, for doing internship. But if on the other hand, if you are not getting these fellowships, there are other ways too. There are so many. If you go to the Science and Engineering Board (SERB) website, you'll find a list of opportunities for undergrad students who wants to do their research abroad, who wants to something like the DAAD fellowship, the DART fellowship. You can apply. You can go to Germany, do your research, come back. They'll pay you. And the one I talked about in South Korea, I got an individual fellowship. The professor paid me uh, all the flights, my stay, and everything. So, and also, if you go to the IITs, do your internships, there's something called SURF, Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship. You can apply there and you can get it. And then you can also apply for IAS, the Indian Academy of Sciences Fellowship. They also do pay you for your internship. So there are a few other things that I know, but I think if you nowadays in India, the research environment is growing, and there might be many other fellowships, individual fellowships by the universities itself.
That was very, very helpful. I did feel that you just have to do your work and be crazy enough to explore, and money will come. But the
Yes.
it coming from you really gave validation to my theory. Coming to your background itself, I'll
Mhm.
start by asking, how does
Mhm.
somebody think in sixth standard that they want to be a scientist? And then, of course, how did you develop this very specific interest in computational biophysics, and what led you into thinking that this is the field that you can valuably contribute to? Of course, you gave some brief introduction in your previous response, but to
Mhm.
choose that specific subject, and how did your interest eventually develop?
Okay, so if you're in class six, obviously there are so many options available to you, right? And one of the best ways you find out what you want to become is to eliminate what you don't want to become. I think prior to 6 years before, I also wanted to appear for the IS examination. But means you have one life, and that's all you can do in one life is to go for one of the best things you have available in your hand, or you're best equipped to without taking much risks. So it's like if you're in an environment where you see people working crazily hard for science, and if I'm talking about quota, I'm talking about the training that is given to the students, and that is so fantastic from the point of view of science. But when you grow up, you reach eighth, ninth, 10th, you start finishing up books, the Irodo for physics, then HC Verma for physics, then the end goal is not clear. And that's where I was in a big dilemma. Everyone was interested in science, but more than that, they were interested in the output of science. So I think it was in my 12th standard where we were solving those integrations, the big integrations. And one of them was the Riemann integration, which is kind of the integration of x square is x cube upon 3 plus c equals constant. And if someone, I was, again, everyone is very naive. I asked, like, how do you get it? Then he was my teacher, and he's still my like best mentor and guide. You must have heard of Career Point, and We were in one of the batches where the director of Career Point, Shalendra Maheshwari, like he taught us the I think the 20 students were in a separate batch, and he taught us all these things. And he asked like, why do you want to know what is the integration of x squared and why it is x cubed by 3? And so he took one day off. He read an entire book on Riemann integral. He called me in his office and he explained me. And then he said, like, you do not need to know all these things, and it's not important for the point of view of IIT examination. So what I'm trying to say is, although I wanted to be a scientist because Einstein used to have a big influence on his environment. I liked him as a when I was too young. But the consequences of working so hard for science was not being a scientist in Kota. It was being an engineer. And right now, that's the point exactly here is we are missing the entire thing. We are one of the most nourished students in the world. In the US, if you see alone, we are one of the best batches of brains here. We are also one of the best trained students, but um, only a fraction of them is doing science. And that's where I knew that I do not want to do engineering. So I kept on losing my options or kicking my options off, which I do not want to do. And one of the best things that was left is doing science. I didn't know how to do that, and that's how I figured it out. Internet was kind of growing in that time, although we didn't have as fast as data. We used to have cyber cafes at that time, and I used to go to cyber cafes and search about things, and that's how I kind of understood that this is the way to go. I enjoyed, and I'm enjoying till now. As I said, I wanted to work in chemistry because somehow something clicked for me in chemistry, but I was always associated with physics, which was my kind of first love. Especially people who are lovers of H.C. Verma will always remember those monkeys pulling down the pulleys. And that was one of the images that's still in my mind because I, at that little age, I wanted to do that experiment myself. So that is how the love for physics was for me. It was remarkable. But in IISER, I chose chemistry as my major because I thought like quantum mechanics is a way to go for me. And except one of the internships in South Korea, where I mostly worked on some other methods in science, especially the carbon. It's called a CVD technique and things like that. In all my four internships, I worked on quantum chemistry and its application of quantum chemistry. Uh, so once I finished my bachelor's and master's degree, then it was a time for me to decide where to apply for and where to go for a PhD because that was the only way for me to go. And I think majority of the ICE students and IAC and even NICE students choose to do PhD. Yeah, it is one of the big issues we are facing today because not all of them want to do a PhD. Someone wants to. There are quite a few students who want to transition from an MS degree to an industry. But the position of industry in India employing students in science is pretty much vague, uh, not streamlined, and not very proper. So that is one of the reasons why, even though someone does not want to pursue a PhD, they are sometimes forced, I would say, to do a PhD because of the lack of infrastructure of recruiting very good minds from science backgrounds into industry. So that's where, and I was not very sure about quantum mechanics, but luckily, you would say, or yeah, based on my experience in my internships and my grades and my even my publications, I got this fellowship from the Swiss government, the Switzerland government, in an institution called ETH Zurich. So and it paid me really well. It's uh, it's equivalent to 65 lakhs at that time, and for a year, it was paying me very good. And only one Indian student gets that fellowship every year. So it was pretty much prestigious. I didn't think twice because I was still deciding which area of research I should go for. And that's how I ended up into doing 1 year of research at in Switzerland. And that's where I got to know that what are the things that IISER did not teach me or I did not teach myself. And one of the things I got interested in it was computer science. And slowly, but very in a time span of 1.5 years, I did complete my master's, online master's. That time, I think online master's was not such a big deal. Now it's kind of everywhere because of the COVID and stuff. I did an online master's in computer science from UCST, and it was an online master's. So I could have done it from anywhere. I did it from UCST, and that's where I thought, okay, now you got to know quantum mechanics. You have quite an experience. I won't say expertise, but experience in quantum mechanics. Now you know how to apply quantum mechanics in computers, and now you also know computer science. Now I thought it's the best time for me to apply for a PhD in one of the best institutes, which works on the intersection of computer science, chemistry, and maybe biology. Because I'm not very good in biology, but I am good in all other aspects. And I think we got lucky actually. So that's how I applied to the universities in the US. And yeah, I got in few of them, and I chose UCST. It's a beautiful place. San Diego is a very beautiful place, and that's where you got to know. Here, it doesn't happen like you need to rotate in few of the labs, like 2 months, 1 month each, before deciding which research suits you the best. And luckily, what happened is there was a team who worked on viral research, like research in viruses, computational research in viruses, using molecular dynamics. So, if I say molecular dynamics and quantum mechanics, these are the two different aspects of the theory. One comes from quantum mechanics, and one comes from Newtonian mechanics. So one applies the Newton laws of motion, one applies the quantum laws, and I found a way to how to use my old experience in quantum mechanics in addition to the new methods I would learn here in this lab. So that's how I'm currently working on application of molecular dynamics and quantum mechanics, and then apply it into systems in real world systems like the Parkinson's gene, like the cancer cells or the proteins which can cause cancer. And also, since we are doing virus research, the COVID happened, and that's how we started working on the COVID-19 virus as well. So our labs is in collaboration with one of the professors in University of Texas, who is the founder of, you could say, the man behind the Moderna vaccine. So that's how the research goes here. It's pretty much uh, interdisciplinary. And currently, now I'm almost at the end of my PhD, and I'm looking forward to work further in this area. But right now, I'm working with Professor Joachim Frank, and he's a Nobel laureate from Columbia University. He received his Nobel Prize in 2017. So I kind of moved from here to New York, where I'm working with him with his newly developed, or you could say, the cryo EM protein imaging. So that's what I've been doing right now.
That was part 1 of the series with Mr. Anand Ojha. We will have him in the next episode as well, talking about his experiences in the industry, working in the US, life as a PhD student, and his future endeavors. If you have any questions for him, hit us up on our social media. See you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Purple Science Podcast. We share stories every Tuesday. Our inbox is always open for your feedback, and our DMs across all social media platforms linked in the description are open to your unique stories. If you know somebody who might benefit from this, do share the podcast with them and spread the joy of learning.